Hello everyone, my name is Bea and I welcome you to Curiosity, Creativity and Beyond. Today we're going to take a look at this amazing, beautiful Narcissus plant that I've been observing for the last couple of weeks, and I've been paying attention particularly to how the flower comes out of the stem and how it evolves until it is like now. It's seen better days. So I've been taking photos, I've been observing, and I found it terrifically interesting how the narcissus flower becomes this beautiful flower just from a stem. For today, I have my back box because it will allow me to see through the magnifying lens at the top of the lid. I also have an eraser. I have my non-photo blue pencil, a set of graphite pencils. I particularly love the 2B. The HB can be a little bit hard on the surface of the paper, and the 4B, it smudges quite a bit. But I still like to have them just in case. I also have my sharpener and I have a ruler so I can measure, transparent ruler, so I can measure things while I see through. So I took very close-up photos of the flowers as they came out, so you will be able to access them. Are you ready? So I'm going to start with my non-photo blue pencil, and I think I'm going to start with the moment that I first noticed that among all these stems and branches at the bottom of the plant, there were some that were a little bit different, and I took very close look at them, and I noticed, let's see if I can sharpen this, and I noticed how the color was very similar to the other stems. But if you see the photo, you will see that at the beginning, the only way that I could distinguish, and I'm gonna lower it, there we go, so we can see it better. The only way that I could see that this was gonna be something different from the rest was that they were slightly thicker at the very top. The other stems that I saw coming from the plant were round and they were more uniform in width. And when I measure them, and I'm gonna do it right now, when I measure these stems, they're no more than half a centimeter. So that's why it made it a little bit difficult for me to see which ones would become a flower and which ones wouldn't. So they are all 0.5 centimeters. But definitely it was the this slight widening at the top that kind of revealed that these was going to be something different. And let's call these day 1. Day 1. So as I was taking notes, I realized that around day 4, there was an incredible difference. Now I could see that definitely this was becoming something that had definitely a different shape. And not only a different shape, it was angled. It had a very widened area here, and then the stem continued. I'll add more detail as I go with my 2B pencil. And And this was fascinating to observe, because then I knew that that was going to be something different. At day 7, I noticed how this was evolving into something that was about to open. One thing I noticed was that not only this bud was oriented towards the sun, and I might actually add an arrow and said starts orienting to the sun. And starts curving towards the window. And I found absolutely beautiful that I was starting to see two different parts. I was starting to see as if there was some sort of transparent cover that was actually retracting and starting to show a beautiful, beautiful bright yellow color right here. And I'm gonna add also how these bend towards the window. There was this interesting widening here still. At around day 10, those were 3 days of excitement as I saw how this part was retracting. And by retracting, I mean it was peeling, as if I made a hole in a sock and I could see my big toe coming through. And that's something I want to write down here. It looks like, let's see if I can draw a sock. And then I have a hole in my sock. And I can see my fingers coming through. So that's how it looked like, as if I was moving this sock that way and showing my toes. So I'm gonna go with my 2B pencil and I'm gonna start drawing these, and then I'm gonna do this one here. So as I said at the beginning, I couldn't really distinguish which stems were going to be flowers and which stems were going to become a bud, with the exception of a widening, a slight widening. And as you see, I made a correction here, which is why I use the non-photo blue paper, so I can still add detail as I go. One of the things also I noticed, and I will add these with some color, was that it's all uniformly green, and I'm gonna do that right now. Alright, so I brought some colors in, so I don't forget my observations as I am one thing I noticed is how all of it was the same color as the other stems, as the other leaves, as the rest of the plant. It it was all as green as the rest of the plant. The only difference was this. As I said, on day 4, I started noticing how this grew so tall. By comparison. And in my notebook, I have these. On day 1 was 5 centimeters, and it grew on day 4 to 11 centimeters. So in 3 days, we just got that. Parallel lines. I first make one, then I make the other one so it gets easier. And here, one thing that I start notice is a shift in colors. I start noticing how, yes, this is still green, yes, all throughout the stem, this widening here, it's still a little bit green, but I can see that something yellow is underneath. So I can also indicate that I see yellow, kind of, it's like behind the green, so I can see yellow through. And as we said, as I did, it reminds me of a sock that has a hole at the end and my toes are wiggling. I notice that on day 7, now I can add more detail of this sock, that it's starting to reveal very beautiful yellow. Underneath. And there's a little bit of texture on both parts. On this bud, they're like very subtle lines, as if it's all wrapped like a gift. This sock also has starting to show some texture as well. This has a name. Spathe. The spathe is this specialized sock looking structure that is starting to reveal the bud underneath. And it's still green, although it's starting to get more and more transparent. So it is not as green as in here, as green as in the rest of the stem. I'm starting to notice also how it's starting to get a little bit there we go. And what happened on day 10th? On day 10th, I continued observing how this path kept retracting. And I simply, oops, I'm going to use my non-photo blue pencil. I was so overjoyed and thrilled when I saw that this path was starting to curl backwards, and a beautiful flower was starting to show. It came all wrapped up. It came all I almost miss it because it happened so quickly. And one thing I started to notice as well, it was how this path, as it was coming this way, it started to dry out. And I see that because it starts to curl. And it's losing its transparent, beautiful color, and is now beginning to dry out. And it's a little bit of a different tone. Let's see if I can find. It's not red. You see, sometimes you try colors and they don't work out the way you wish. That's fine. You just try a new color. So I brought more colors. I notice I am coloring. I'm so excited about the colors that I So as I said, as these space retracts, starts to dry out, and now I can see all these lines so much better, and it starts curling. And also one interesting thing is that it seems as if it continues. Before it was just here, and now all these surface starting to look like it. Then it transitions into my stem. And in terms of colors, this was so beautifully bright yellow. Oops. So bright. And by contrast, the path was so dead. This looks so alive, and this so dead. And right the day after, on day 11, so this is day 10. Sorry, I might write this a little bit more clearly so we don't confuse the days. This is day 10, and then on day 11, this is what I found when I went to to say good morning to the Narcissus. I found that this path had curled even more, even lowered a little bit more than the day before, up to an area that was very clear. That would be the transition between this path and the rest of the stem. And guess what? This area that was before covered, now it was uncovering these structures. I noticed immediately that there was two areas, a flower here and a green area here. The green area looked like, I'm gonna write it here, it looked like one of these megaphones that people use so they can be heard. Attention, please. Attention, attention, please. So it makes the voice much louder. It reminds me of that. Here, the flower, I notice in profile when I see it from the side, and we can see it here, although it's in better days, how, let's see if I can hold this for you to see it, how this path here, how the green area that is now drying out, and finally the flower. And you see it's very clear this distinction between this path and the rest of the stem. And now that I have it here, I'm going to measure. That was 4 centimeters of spath. And, well, now it's dried out. At least 4.5 centimeters. So we're going to say, I'm going to put this plant aside so I can continue my study. And that's something that you can do as well. You can take photos every morning of your favorite flower and see how she's doing every day. And then you can see the progression, and you can put that in your nature journal. I notice how the Narcissus, in profile view, I can only see 3, these are called tepals, and I see 3. So I write times 3 because this is what I can see in profile view. And then one thing I noticed that I really like is how these curls, how this border is super curly, and each curl leaves a ripple, and how that makes this area that is called the crown, the corona, how it creates all these beautiful shapes. I'm going to go with my 2B pencil and refine a little bit this drawing. As I said, this trumpet looking, megaphone looking, parts. Maybe she wants to say something. And then we see the sepals in profile, which are going to look different in a front view and in profile. If you only see it from the profile, you're going to think that the Narcissus has only 3 tepals. But if you see it from the front view, you're gonna see how that changes. So it's important that you look at your plants from all angles and very carefully rotate them to see all around. And then this continues here, and as I said, the spathe, it's all drying out. It is not as transparent as it was. It's kind of curled. It has more brown in it. It's very irregular. It has a very interesting shape. And as it comes this way, it is going to be a little bit less dry. That means that this is the more brown, dark orange area, and here is still a little bit more like this. Still a little bit more green, but still more yellowy than this area. That's why I'm sketching and coloring at the same time, because I'm making all these observations at the same time. So as I said, this upper part here is going to be much more dry and not super dark, because then I still can see some orange, but definitely darker than it was than before. And here it transitions into green, but I still see so much more orange and yellow than in here. And I also see more ripples and more texture. Finally, I have a normal green, a healthy looking green, the same green that I've seen all throughout all these days. And let's see, this color green here is very similar to that. It's a bright green, slightly less green there. I guess, I don't know, I wonder, I'm gonna make an asterisk because I don't have enough room there to write my observation. I'm gonna bring it here, and that's a good way of making a reference. It's less green. I wonder whether it is less exposed to the sun, maybe, and maybe as these space retracts, maybe this will be more exposed to the sun and it will be as green as the rest. I don't know, I'll have to find out. But it's definitely a more pale green. And I'm also using things that I've learned, for example, and that I observed, that if the light comes from here, this area is in shadow, so I can make it a little bit darker. No, I don't have. There we go. So I can have a little bit of a darker color. And if you lose your lines, you can make them again with, don't be afraid of going with the pencil again. Another way of having shadows is use a brown on top. That can also work. Very ever so lightly. And now I can see what I was observing, that this is a much more pale green than this, and this is why I made my note here. And about the actual flower, one thing I noticed in my Narcissus, and you can still see this here, is how the actual crown is slightly more orange than all the rest of the flower, the tepals. And that was something that I wanted to put in my drawing. I wanted to make that observation. I saw other Narcissus when I got this one that were all uniformly yellow, but this one I especially liked, that the flower would be a little bit different. The crown would be a little bit more different than the rest. And I'm just coloring the crown, and every ripple would give these beautiful shade areas. So you can press harder with the pencil, and you can leave some areas without pressing that hard to create a nice effect of light and shadow. So that was my crown. And then all the tepals, they were also interesting to look at, because even though the color was yellow, I noticed that they also had areas of shade, of shadow. And I kept thinking, what color am I going to use? Because it's not black, it's not brown, it's actually a little bit green, blue, green. So I was like, I need to try that. So I'm going to try that here. Let's try it together. If this is my color yellow, I'm going to try 3 different things. 3 different mix. I'm going to try to mix it with blue, very lightly. I'm going to try to mix it with green. Let's see if I'm happy. And I'm going to mix it with brown, very lightly. And the color that I actually saw, and that you can see in the close-up photos I took, is so much more like this. This was the one that was with blue. This is the one that was mixed with green. and this is the one that was mixed with brown. And what I really found interesting, it was this one. So for me to create the shadows that I see on a flower that has yellow is to add a little bit of blue on the areas that are in shadow. And it's still yellow, it's still color yellow, but in shadow. Isn't that interesting? I really thought I would try to match the color that I see. And it makes sense that these are the shadow areas because the light comes from here. These would be all light. And you can go on top with the yellow to make sure that everything looks yellow. I'm going to add a little bit more of contrast between this green and this green. And as I said, from the front, I thought, oh, well, I'm going to look at the Narcissus from the front view. And the Narcissus, if I take the plant again, now the flowers are dying, but I was able to look inside instead of from the profile like this. I look at like this, and I was able to take a photo of it for you. And I'm going to do it here. I'm going to draw it here in this space that I have here because it was so different. So for me to draw that, I'm going to start with a circle. And I see that there's two parts that are very differentiated. And one is the crown. And I'm just going to make a circle for now, and I will add detail later. And then I noticed that there were three, as in profile view, 6 tepals. And for me to draw them, I noticed that there are the same amount of tepals on each side. So for that reason, I'm going to use my ruler and I'm going to divide this in 2. So whatever I draw in here, it will mirror the other one. And I'm going to also make a line here to help us find what's the middle. So let's just do 1/2 first. I'm going to do this half first. This sepal is occupying this tepal. It comes like this. It occupies all that area of my circle. And it curves a little bit, and I'm going to draw it as if I was having Superman vision and I'm able to see through, like a transparency. That's one of them. The other one I notice, it's exactly on the same place, but on this lower part of the circle. So this also can be described as a quadrant. This is also can be called a sector. Or if you think that this is a pie, this piece of pie. So this tepal is on this piece of the pie, and this tepal is on this piece of the pie. And one thing I notice is they're not all the same. Yes, they're all a little bit wider on the sides, but as they come to the actual edge, they start to meet in the middle. And this one has a much more pointy end, whereas this one is not as pointy. So they're, even though they're in the same flower, they're a little bit different. Let's see this one here. This one coincides with this midline that we made before. So I'm gonna totally take advantage of that with my X-ray vision that I see through. And I am going to observe how it also comes to the pointy end. In my X-ray vision, I'm going to finish also as if I could see through. And guess what? These will mirror exactly here. Not exactly, because I will observe differences in the tip of the tepals. But now I can use that as a template. So I know that in this piece of the pie, I'll have another one. And when I look at my reference, I'll see that, yeah, it also widens up a little bit here and here. And it ends, in this case, a little bit flatter. Maybe it's folded in the back. I don't know. I just look what is in front of me and I just draw what I see. Then I have another one here that has, again, it's a little bit wider on the sides. And it thins out as it, I think I did it a little bit longer, so I'm gonna correct it. And that's why I love the Known for the Blue pencil. It's my work in progress pencil. And then finally another leaf, sorry, another tepal here. They look like leaves, don't they? This one I like because it has a very interesting end there with a curl, and then like this. And with my X-ray vision, I can finish drawing that. Let's go and do the crown. I just made a circle before, but if I look closer, I notice that all these ripples and curvy lines are very, very, very visible here. It's not just the circle. It's so asymmetrical, and asymmetrical means that it's not the same. It's very different. And I'm just, instead of making it up, I think I'm just gonna copy what I see. Sometimes, well, sometimes, often nature comes up with things that I couldn't even imagine. So I like to observe and like, how did nature think of that? Wow, so it was a circle, and now look at that shape. One thing that is definitely very, very regular is what I see inside. It's so interesting. I think I see a very geometrical shape, and it's very regular, and it has this shape. And when a shape like this has this geometrical shape, I like to count how many of these sides it has. Let's count it together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This has a name. This, when it has 6, is called hexagon. Hexa means 6. So that's what I see there. Isn't that funny that nature made this very, very, very irregular thing, and then in the middle an hexagon. In the middle of the hexagon, I see two different structures. I see one structure that is very yellow bright, and then other structures that are a little bit less bright. And I can use this hexagon that I made here and add those details as if it was a zoom, because I see there's like a, has like threes. It looks like a popcorn. It looks like a popcorn. And then around it I see what looks like beans. So let's name all these structures. So the thing that looked to me like popcorn is called the stigma. And I'm going to put here, it looks like popcorn. And the other shapes that look like a bean is called anther. And I'm going to put here, it looks like beans. And I'll try to explain what it is on the profile view. So these structures that I see continue towards here. So if I was to see those structures in profile here, I would see how the stigma continues, and actually continues here. That's the whole shape of the flower. So the stigma in profile, that thing that we see there, that's the tip here. That's the tip. That's the stigma. The thing that I saw that looked like popcorn. This thing that connects it to the rest is the style from here until here. Isn't that interesting? And all these anthers that I see around, they also continue. They also continue. And this is what is called a filament. All these. But I can only see those if I remove the tepals. And this is in profile. This is front view. I'm going to put that here, front and profile. So let's add some of the detail, because I think it's very interesting that we finish our front view. Because I really like all these curves and how I see how each curves inside, and all these wrinkles, they're connected to the center, and it looks like a skirt too, looking from here, like a dress with the hemline at the bottom. Yeah. And some of the tepals are in front of the other tepals, and I'm gonna look carefully at that, because I think this is in front. So I'm gonna draw these first. If I look at my reference, I notice how this is in front. I'm not going to use my X-ray vision now. I'm going to end my drawing of the temple there. See maybe a little bit of texture. I think this one is also in front. And now I can refine my drawing. Oh, I think I didn't follow my correction, my earlier correction. There we go. So I don't make it longer than it is. And the other one that is in front, I think is this one. Isn't that fun? They alternate front, 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 and then the other one's back, back, back. Wow, that's really interesting. And it ends in this interesting here. And then I'm going to do the other ones, and because they're behind, I won't see where they meet the crown. That's one, and I'm going to do this one here. And I'm correcting as well as I go, because maybe there are things that I didn't notice before. That's another one, and then my final stipple. That joins the other stipple. And then in the middle, I am gonna include a little bit of the detail that I see. But that was my close-up. So I'm gonna just also so what looks like popcorn was this structure, the stigma at the end of the style, and what was the antler was this, located at the very top of the filament, and this could only be seen in profile view. So let's add some color. As you can see in the photo reference, there will be also tepals that are in shade, and because we did our color experiment, we are going to be able to replicate that here and see which will be in shape, which will be in shade, and which will be hit by the light. And I'm just adding a very, very first layer of yellow. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow here. Oh, I forgot to add a little bit of to my hexagon. So as it worked before, I'm going to use the blue, and I noticed that the light came from here, from right to left. So this teple here is almost all in shade. There's, yes, some areas that are more in shade, like this tip here and this area here, but overall, while it's still yellow, it's in shade. And I don't want to add black, because black is just going to make it look black. I wanted to make it dark but yellow. So I made those experiments there to see what color could go well. And I'm still gonna go after with my yellow to ensure that is yellow. I'm gonna go with my yellow, and I'm going to continue because I noticed that there's an area here that is also in shade. I'm going to do the same thing. I notice there's an area here that is on shade, and this depends on the light and how you have your light at home. You can create very, very interesting shapes with light. If you move a lamp carefully, you can create all these really interesting shades in your objects, in your plants. So I notice there's a shade here. I can see a little bit of the blue, but I don't mind the non-photo blue, because it was just my friendly pencil to sketch with. And then I notice, because the light comes from here, maybe this stipple is a little bit lifted, so there is more shade here. So that's why I see these here. And there's some shade here, a little bit here when we go near the crown, which makes sense. Also a little bit of shade because the stipple is overlapping, and when you have two structures that overlap each other, do you see what happens? My hand is projecting a shadow on top of this hand. You can observe your own hands and play with the shadows. There's fun shadows you can make with your hands if you project the shadows on a wall. That's a fun game. You can make all sorts of animals. One thing I'm going to add a little bit of is the rest of the stem, because I want to make sure it has is not floating away. This area here, I see that is here. So that's something that I want to add. And I also want to make sure I cannot see the space from behind, but I want to make sure that it's there. Oops, I have not done my drawing with my 2B. And because this area is so in the dark, I'm gonna have to use some darker brown. This is right behind. We're looking at the flower from here, so we cannot see these. And then I'm gonna go and color my crown that is more orange. And it has very interesting light and shadow combinations inside. The light comes from here. There's some areas that are in shadow. There's some areas that are with the light. So I'm gonna use some yellow, the lights that are exposed to the light, and also for the stigma, that's also very yellow. I'm gonna use this yellow here. Whereas the anthers were super orangey. I'm gonna put them here. And because they're super orangey, I'm gonna use a little bit of red. See, yeah, that's more like it. Yeah, I see. I can use a little bit of red, and it depends really on how your plant looks like, because some are very different. Some are all yellow. Something that, yeah, you have to choose the one that you have around at home. And then for the inside, because it's super dark in there, I want to make sure though that I can see the structures, but I'm just going to go with a dark brown. I still want to see the structures. Still want to see them. Maybe I'll go with my 2B pencil for the darkest areas, and I can redraw. There we go. Some yellow. And I can even try and see if the same trick will work here. So that would be my front view, and that would be my profile view on my day 11. Here, I'm gonna make a square around the days so I can see them clearly. My day 10, my day 7, day 4, and day 1. And I think I'm gonna have fun with my title as well today. Let's see, I'm gonna make my fonts like this so I can actually color them. And my plan today was called Narcissus. C and I, and it has 2 S's. So let's see if I can. First S, second S, my U, Narcissus. Narcissus. And because it had yellow, I think I'm going to color my N yellow. And because it had green, I'm going to color and all the colors really that I use. I would like to make a colorful, very colorful title. And I'm going to start repeating. Let's see, I'm going to use the exact same order just to have fun. Yellow, green, and you can use the colors that you wish and in the order that you prefer. I'm going to use the red, and then that is my Narcissus from the day I got it and the day I first noticed the different stem until the day 11 when I had this beautiful, beautiful flower, and I drew it in profile view and I drew it in front view. So now is your time to have fun.